So thank you very much to Professor Zurab Yanalitsa and his old student, now Dr. Pierre-Alain Jacquemin. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, yes.
Great. So thank you for the both of you for joining us today on this topic of discussing the uses, pros and cons of competition in mathematics and maybe how it's changed over the years. So thank you everyone for joining for that. At the end, I just wanted to make an announcement as well for everyone else, but let's first just have the discussion. So first, I'm just going to ask Dr. Zurab the question, very loose question is, what is your experience with applying competition in studying mathematics?
Hi, sorry, just for those who joined later than our initial discussion we had, just to clarify that I'm not hosting this discussion, but Mr. Van Niekerk is.
Yes.
And thank you for the invitation to the discussion. You're asking me what is my experience with using competition in teaching mathematics?
Yes, or your understanding of the experience, your understanding of what you've observed other people experience when it comes to having competition with each other in mathematics or with the system or studying in general.
Well, it's a very difficult question because, first of all, I don't really know what competition is. I think this concept doesn't make sense. Now, if we're talking about this seriously, if we're talking about it in the same way as we see the term competition coming up in various events that human beings organize, yeah, it's a fun thing. I think everybody loves to compete. Not maybe everybody. It's a fun thing to compete. But when it comes to learning something and studying something, I don't understand how competition can fit with that. Of course, if you want to compete for something, you might have to learn something first. On the other hand, when you're competing, that's a learning experience of its own. But for me, competition and learning are quite far from each other. It's like what is common between learning mathematics and eating dinner? Well, I need to eat a good dinner if I need to think about mathematics, and if I eat too much of dinner, then I can't think about mathematics anymore. And so that's the kind of link that there is, I think, with competition in mathematics. If you do too much of it, then you can't do mathematics anymore. But sometimes maybe you need to do a little bit of it. But I would prefer competition with oneself than with others, actually. I think competing with others is quite destructive for learning mathematics.
The example I thought of when I was asking the question is, I've asked you, we've spoken about this before, and when I told you about my interest to continue mathematics in combinatorics, you said that, or number theory actually, you said that it's a very competitive field. So can you elaborate on the competition, the definition of competition that you used when you say it's a competitive field, and juxtapose that towards this, what you just said, that competition is destructive in learning mathematics.
Yeah, so that the meaning of the word was a bit different in these two contexts. So any human endeavor where lots of people do something, and it's been hundreds of years that they do that, inevitably becomes something competitive, simply because there could be more people than there are resources. For example, there could be more people interested to study number theory in Cambridge than Cambridge can afford a number of students to take them for such a study. And so it then inevitably becomes something competitive. With something like number theory, which has been around for a very long time, it's quite understandable that number theory is very competitive. And so if you're the kind of person that gets inspired by this competitive nature of a field, then that will be a bonus for you, right? But if you don't get inspired by competition, that will be the other way around. But in either case, when you do any subject, you don't do it because of competition. Competition is just this external factor that you have to take into account and decide how well it fits with your personality. If you want to pursue studies I mean, if this was a hobby, that's a very different story, right? But if you want to make a career out of it, you want to get a job lecturing number theory and so on. That's what we're talking about, right? That's what the competition comes in. Otherwise, if you just want to study for your own sake, then there is no competition at all. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much for that answer.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, it's an open discussion. Anyone can ask a question or give their opinion on anything at any time. So feel free.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I wasn't so sure how it works. Firstly, hello, and thank you for this interesting discussion so far. I was just wondering, what makes number theory more competitive than the other fields, in that ultimately, the thing that makes number theory more competitive is to get positions, but in other fields you also are sort of vying for positions. So why would you say, apart from that it's such an old field, why would you say that it's more competitive? Because my impression is that all fields are very competitive, at least in terms of jobs and like doctoral positions and so on and so forth.
Sarah, is that a question for me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, hello, first of all.
Hello.
I think the answer is quite simple, I must say. Yes, everything is competitive, of course. Getting a job is competitive on its own, of course, and getting a job in academia is actually quite competitive, even if one thinks that maybe it isn't so much. Now, imagine you've got a department of mathematics where each department kind of strives to represent various different fields. And suppose you've got a department that has a field of number theory, of some algebraic geometry, some general topology, and so on. Now, if it's a field in which many people work, right, then there will be more applicants. So when the pool of applicants increases, it becomes more competitive. So from that point of view, it's more competitive, I think. But in general, the number of available positions per applicant is quite limited. Although this is not necessarily so in South Africa, by the way. It's much better. The situation is much better in South Africa than it is in Europe, for instance. And so then it becomes more competitive if the position is in a field where more applicants, there are more potential applicants, right? So in that very primitive sense, that's one thing. And the other thing is that it could also, this feeling that maybe some fields are more competitive could also be coming from the leaders of those fields. So how do the leaders of the fields portray the fields, and how they talk about it, and whether they view awarding prizes, for instance, as an important thing or not. Just to give an example, somebody called Alexander Grothendieck, which is one of the best mathematicians of 20th century, at some point he decided that it's wrong to give or take prizes and so on. And so if he didn't abandon mathematics at that stage, probably his future students from that point on would be less competitive, and whatever subject they would develop, that subject would be less competitive within itself if we don't worry about getting job. So it's the leaders of the field, I think, that also define competitiveness in a way. And I come from category theory, where competition is regarded as a very primitive thing. So we don't have any prizes for excellent works in category theory. Our journals do not only accept papers based on some competitive ideas. The journals publish any paper that's excellent contribution to the subject, and they don't necessarily reject a paper because there's another paper that's better than this one. As long as the quality of the paper is extremely high, then it gets published. And so yeah, so I think a field being competitive is also determined by how the leaders of the field portray the field and what traditions they instill among their students.
Thank you.
Can I say something? I just want to say, like, in terms of instilling competition within like people, I think it also starts at like a primary school and high school level, like where they have this top 10, and they like, I know that they have a top 10 and prize givings and they have blazers, and all of these things are used as incentives to incentivize students to work hard. But I think what it ends up doing is that it starts creating this competition where students want to be first. I have to be first, and if I'm first, that means I'm the smartest person. And like, this gets instilled from like primary school level, and then it works its way right through high school, and then in university some students still have that competitive behavior. I've seen it where like a student's consistently in the top 10 since like grade 4 straight through matric, and they come to university and it's like they tend to bring some of those habits with. So what I found, competition creates like a some like amount of selfishness. So if I have notes and I share my notes with you, then it almost brings you on the same, like, I don't know if like the same resource level as me. And there are students who don't share their notes, where it's like, I won't share my notes because if I share my notes, then that means that you could be better than me. But yeah, I do like, that's one of the reasons why I really dislike like the idea of top 10 and like making students in high school and primary school compete against each other, because it creates this like unwanted energy. But yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
If it's all right, I'll use what Sumaya said just now. Thank you for that. I'll use that to segue on to Pierre. From my understanding, Pierre, you attended the IMO a few years back, and now, or you were recently, one of the teachers for IMO as well. Is that correct?
Yes. So first of all, I would like to thank you to invite me to this interesting discussion. Thank you very much. And yes, you are correct on that question. Yeah, I'm teaching in Belgium for IMO students.
Great. I'm very happy about that. One of the guys here, Ralph, for example, was also at IMO. And I made an attempt at it, but regardless of that, I didn't make IMO. What I want to segue onto is from your experience of both attending IMO and growing up in the competition environment, and now being the teacher for students to attend these competitions, what's your opinion on the usage of or what positives do you see that children take from these competitions, and what negatives do you see?
So maybe I will answer to the question by answering also to the previous person who talked, which is not very good to make top 10s in high schools and so on, which I agree with. That's the downside of competition, is there should be a first or few first people. However, coming from Belgium, and when we go to IMO, and I suspect it's the same in South Africa, we do not expect at all to be the first. That's not the goal at all, and we're not able to do that anyway. The goal is totally different. The goal is to go there and to say, okay, there are problems, and the only thing that I want to beat is the problem. I don't want to beat anyone else. There are too many people. I know I will be somewhere in the middle, and well, if I'm a bit higher, a bit lower, doesn't matter really. What makes a lot of fun of it is to try to beat the problem. And to be able to do that, we have to train. We have to train, first to learn some material, and secondly, to be used to new problems and to develop our own ideas. And to achieve that, so first we have to train, and secondly, we have to teach to more people than the actual team. And it means for these few people, even if you go to IMO or not, they learn how to think by themselves and to solve a completely new problem. And so I think that's the very upside of the competition. Then the result by themselves, we don't really care about that. It's more the social event which makes it interesting to go there and to solve problems, and so to train for it.
Okay.
Does that answer the?
I have questions.
Samaya, you want to raise a question?
Yeah. I just I've always heard of these Olympiads, and I'm guessing this is an Olympiad that you're speaking of.
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah. So I've always wondered what the point of these Olympiads were, because for me, in primary school and high school, it was a competition to test your mathematical abilities, and I've always had an issue with competitions, but because but so now the question is just what's the purpose of Olympiads?
So is it a question for me?
Yes, I believe so.
So first of all, I would say, if you ask a question to me or to someone who got very, very good results in IMO, the answer might be different. So I can only answer, let's say, to as a normal, I mean, not normal, to middle graded student, as I was. So to fix the context, IMO is the biggest Olympiad for high school students, and around 600 people are taking part of it each year. So it's very big. And of course, if you ask the one which is second, it might tell you, oh, I'm so disappointed because I wanted to be first and I wanted to beat him. That I don't know, and I cannot tell because it was not my case at all. But on the other way, for my case, what was really interesting is really to go there and to solve the problems. And that was the fun part of it, is that there are many people trying to solve this problem, and then we can discuss, oh, what was your idea? Here's what I did, and we're taking fun out of that. So that's the first objective is really to try to solve the problems. And of course, second objective is to make connections, because you meet a lot of people interested in math, and so it makes really good connection. And I took part in these Olympiads like 10 years ago, and I still have good connection with those I met there.
Thank you. I just have it's more of like I think it's a remark. So one of the objectives of Olympiads is to learn. And Prof. Janelitsa said earlier that like he doesn't feel that learning and competition or competing with other people can work hand in hand. And I actually agree with that, like a lot. Um, and I just wanted to know, like, from a perspective of like having taught in this kind of environment, in like that environment, like, do you feel or do you get the sense that students learn, and like how would you, I would like measure that? Is it through the questions of the Olympiad? Because like okay, but yes, that's what I wanted to say, like who ask.
Yes, I see your point, and maybe you're right. It's not those 6 questions at the Olympiads that you learn a lot. It's more from the training that is before. The Olympiads is more like an objective, something you like to do, and so to enjoy it, you train to go. I mean, you train your math to be able to do something there and to solve the problem, because if you know you're going there and the problems are too hard for you, then there is no point, maybe. So the point is more to go up in your level, on your personal level in math, to be able to solve these problems. So that takes a lot of time, and that was very beneficial, at least for me, and I'm sure it was beneficial for the student I taught. And to come back to what you said, saying, oh, I'm not sharing notes because I want to beat you. I never, absolutely never saw that in IMO. I mean, in the training team, at least in Belgium, they say. I cannot speak for other countries, but at least here, I never saw something like that. It's more, let's train together, even if there are only 3 places for us, and we four of us, let's train all of them together, and at the end we don't care, and we'll not be angry against each other. That's not at all the point. We train because we like it, and that's it.
If I may mention,
Yeah,
I believe, sorry to interrupt you, Sumaya. I believe for the competitions, when it's like this, where you're a team and you're representing your country, you're representing Belgium or South Africa or such, then your objective is more aimed at beating the other countries than beating your teammates. So you want your team to be as strong as possible. You don't just want to be absolutely selfish and just have yourself be the best of the team, because that doesn't mean anything in terms of the competition. It's better to have your team beat other countries than you beat your team. Is that correct?
Yes, you want your team to be as good as possible, but at the end you want other teams to be good as well. I was okay. What I was saying is that so to go to IMO, you need to be selected. Yes. So in South Africa, there are 6 selected people, as everywhere, and even if there are 10 people training to go there, I'm sure they're not saying, "Oh, I'm not sharing my notes because I want to beat you to have a place to go there." And in the IMO, it's more to make friends than to try to beat others, basically.
Okay. So I'm going to ask the next question back to Professor Janelitsa. So from what we've discussed now about there being competition instilled into students and learners from a very young age, and through these competitions in high school and so on, I feel like what I've observed is students tend to, you said that it's better to have a competition within yourself instead of with each other, because it tends to be more productive and keep you more happy. So what is your experience with students who their competition is with themselves, but they measure that the success of their competition purely by their marks? They only try for the best marks instead of learning the content and achieving the mark that they get from that. They prioritize only the bits of the content that they feel would get them the best marks and show them on a piece of paper how good they are, but they don't understand it as good as they can. Could you elaborate on your observations of students doing this and how you think we can solve this?
Yeah, I think that I really liked what Berlan told us, that if one, it's more about the attitude rather of the participant, right? So, I mean, I also like to take part into competitions, but not in order to beat anybody, just for the fun of it. And if that's the approach one has, then I don't see anything wrong with the competition. And if one doesn't get jealous if somebody gets a better place, or one doesn't get very arrogant if oneself gets a better place, then there is nothing wrong with competition. I think it's quite a fun social activity, like eating dinner. So in terms of students who I've observed that they're exaggerating the competitive aspect rather than the mathematical in their studies. Indeed, you can see that there are often students who get higher marks than those who actually understand the subject much deeper. And this is because in a subject you have to, I mean, in a competition you have to say exactly what the rules are, right? And then one can train for fulfilling those rules and kind of winning the competition without necessarily getting the depth of the subject. And so, particularly in examination systems, I think that it's very easy to, if you have a certain level of talent in mathematics, it's very easy to get a very high mark in an exam, especially in modern exams, without really understanding anything in the subject. You still have talent, so that makes it easy for you to memorize things because you naturally are good at remembering mathematical phenomenon. But then you don't really have to engage it deeply. You just remember it because you can, and then you write the exam well. And so I think that those students who are after these kinds of things, after winning, after getting marks and so on, they're the ones who are losing out on. And the more ability they have for mathematics, the more they're losing out, because in that time they could have developed themselves much further. But as I say, on the other hand, if they have the right attitude, the kind of attitude that Berlan is describing, then there is no problem. It's fine if they get high marks, but if they're studying the subject because of the marks, then that's when it becomes not fine. And my experience is indeed that I've had many students throughout the years where somebody would get clearly higher mark than the other one, but the other one was clearly much more knowledgeable about the subject. And in the modules that I teach, I try to minimize this, but it's impossible because I'm also forced to say in advance what the rules are for assessing things, and then some students will just do that to conform to those rules. So if you have some ability in the subject, you can fall into the routine of winning competitions, and then miss out on the on developing yourself in the subject. Yeah, I think that answers your question, no?
I'm just going to ask a follow-up question, just for anyone that has not attended one of your very lovely classes that you give. How have you implemented what you said you want to achieve into your classes to try and minimize it?
For example, if I give some homework for everybody, some canonical homework they should do, for which they will get some marks. If somebody didn't do that homework and instead of that homework did something on their own, made their own discovery in mathematics, which shows that the amount of insight they've gained through this process is significantly higher than what my homework would have achieved, then I would give them these marks out of nowhere from the work they produced. And so there are many examples of my students in these courses who would make amazing discoveries, mathematical discoveries, which later on turned into their postgraduate study topics. In the subjects that I give, the mark would reflect that they've been making these discoveries. Whereas if I didn't do that, and if I was more canonical in terms of examinations, then these marks wouldn't have reflected that. But they don't know in advance they're going to get a mark for it, so it's not like they're doing it for the mark.
Yes, that your assessment is much more flexible, and without there being a set out document for them to say this is how you achieve 50, 70, 90%. You give what's required by the department. You need some minimal model of how your mark allocation will be, but you keep to yourself the other ways, which is if they find beauty, then that beauty will be assessed. Is that correct?
Yes, more or less like that. Yes.
Great. Yes, that's the experience that I know from your classes as well, and I'm sure Sumaya can agree.
Yes, I just also want to make like a remark on this, is that like I think passion for a subject makes a difference in terms of whether students will be doing it for marks or doing it because they want to learn.
Very true. Very true. Okay, so I want to raise a question, and anyone is free to answer. It's not addressed towards just Professor Zurab or Dr. Jackman. So the question I want to give is, if we think about the psychology behind all of this, behind behind the competitions in high school and the few competitions in university, and the competitive nature that people still use in university that was installed from high school, all these things, if we look at the psychology behind it, it is a psychology of, if someone performs something and the remark that they are given, not necessarily by a person, but by society, is good or bad, and it gets repeated, then people tend to turn into that. So for example, if you get a grade 4 girl and she performs well in, say, just one of her modules, say mathematics, and the teacher say, you did well, you're a smart girl, and then her parents say that, and her friends' parents say that, then she gets this good feeling of like, oh well, then I guess I'm a smart girl, I better stay a smart girl. And then she does the same for grade 5, still smart, does the same for the rest of her modules, still being called smart, and then it becomes a habit. And it can be equally destructive if someone is told you're dumb or stupid because you did poor in a module or you failed, and enough people call them that, then they're going to start to believe that. it's a tendency that tends to happen with people. Now, concerning the top 10, for example, and these competitions and whether you perform well or bad in these competitions, it's the same effect, I think, where if you perform top 10, it's not necessarily that anyone even needs to tell you that you're smart. The top 10 position itself, you having this number 1 or number 3, tells you, I must be smart to achieve this, and I want to remain smart because this feels good. And that's all that the top 10 achieves, but you can achieve the same with everyone else that's being left behind, that's becoming jealous because they're not there, that's feeling stupid by comparison, which is also bad. Comparing yourself to other people tends to make you feel inferior or stupid or worthless. So I would say it's a good idea to, besides this top 10, I think Pierre mentioned it very briefly about having multiple number 1s, is to tell everyone else as well that's not in these top 10 and to really, really mean it, that they're also smart, that they're also doing well. And then instead of this competitive nature arising for the top performers and then them keeping it all this way and then becoming selfish with it, the way Sumaya described it, if everyone has this feeling of like they're good, they're smart, they're performers, then there would be a collective new atmosphere that's served. Now, that's a long introduction towards my question, is I want to ask, what do all of you think would be the case if everyone was told they're a good person, they're a smart person from this young age and they keep being told that? Do you think it would be a positive effect, or do you think it would be a more competitive, more tense, more negative effect that it would have? Anyone can answer.
So I just want to say, like, I was in a conversation some time ago, but it was by Math, the Psychology of Mathematics. They were hosting it, and it was about teaching and like the way like teachers teach. And I think in that sense, like, I'm just gonna like give like a little conclusion there, that like when teachers are teaching and when students are learning, the objective is to learn. And okay, that sounds weird out of context, but it's that there isn't the sense of marks, and like it isn't marks driven. And if we were to remove this idea of learning being marks driven, then we can introduce it in, and like we can alleviate competition more. I personally, like, in terms of mathematics and the different departments, I haven't had much like interaction with like other, like the fields where you do the numbers stuff, like calculus and stuff like that. But I've seen set theory and I really enjoyed it. And like, it's also because this environment doesn't push me to like be competitive, or like it's not marks driven. I'm not competing with anyone. There isn't like a top of the class. I'm literally there to learn. They give me the work, and if like, and what I liked about Prof. Janelitze is that he'll give you extra stuff. So it's like, here's extra. If you want to learn it, you can learn it. If you don't want to learn it, that's also fine. Like, and in terms of like Olympiads, what I really liked was learning the mathematics. But I found that every time I went into like that field, I'd be like it's accompanied by this toxic competition mentality. Maybe that's just because of the high school I went to or whatever, but like that was like, I feel like we should have more platforms where students are able to learn mathematics for the fun of it. Like there's no winners, like you just here to learn because you want to. But yes, that's just my 2 cents on the thing.
Thank you for that.
Good afternoon. Can I also make a remark?
Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me well? Because my microphone gave problems yesterday.
Yes, can hear you fine.
Okay, that's fine. I agree a lot with Sumaya's view on competition and how one should develop in a field. But I think one of the bigger problems is it's something that's a bit unavoidable at the moment, and that is just high schools and primary schools, because it is compulsory, because you want a number of all people to learn a basic set of things, and not all people are equipped like in a way that they can perform good at school. It's not just they're not equipped to learn stuff. They don't like learning stuff in an academically way, and so they don't excel a lot in primary or high school, but they're still forced to do it. And so all they hear is you just have to get a good mark, because after high school you got to get a job, and you have to have good marks to get a job, because getting a job is competitive, because people look at your marks, and you were forced to be in high and primary school. And so the main concept just becomes you have to get good marks, and that becomes competitive. It's only when you get to university and you actually want to be there that you can have this type of vibe that you learn the things to learn it and not to get good marks. But when you're in a high school and you have to pass, you gotta have good marks, because you gotta get a job someday or whatever. And so then that type of mentality is also it's automatically developed, and I don't really know how to avoid something like that. Maybe to take away things like top 10 or so, to make marks not public. Like you either pass or you don't, but no one knows what you got, and you don't know what you got, because that's also not going to work quite well. But the thing is, the competition aspect automatically develops, because you have to be in school and you have to pass because you want to be somewhere someday. It's only when you get in a tertiary environment where you actually can leave that competition phase and focus on what you want to learn and what will work for you. So yeah, it's something I feel is a bit unavoidable in high school, but yeah, you have to somehow get past that, because I agree with all of the things you just said now. But if I can make a last remark with the tennis that's going on now, I had a brilliant coach in high school, and the thing is, he said if you only train to be number one day, because he did that, and at 16 he was like number one in the country. And when he got there, he only trained to be number one. And when he got there, he like burnt out. He didn't know what to do, because now he's number one. What now? But you have to. So he coached us to have the mentality to, you want to learn and to develop and be better at tennis, not to be number one. So if you can have that mentality in school, that would it would go very well. But it's still going to be hard. It's going to depend on the individuals and on the teachers, because if you want to learn, sometimes you don't get the best marks. And if you don't get the best marks, then you're sort of, I'm not going to get into the university, or I'm not going to get a job. So it's sort of, it's a really hard concept, I think, but it's going to depend on the individuals and the teachers, I feel. So, yeah.
Thank you very much for that answer as well. Does anyone else want to say anything further about this?
Maybe, well, my perspective is I don't think that there's really anything wrong with the concept of competition. So things like evolution and all that happen because of competition. And I think competition can be a very good thing in inspiring people and driving them forward. But I think the problem comes in, like, I think several people, particularly Professor Jan-Lietse has touched on it, when people have quite a toxic attitude towards competition. And this is where they always feel like they have to be the best, and they get really upset if they're not number 1 or even top 10 or whatever. And so I think fundamentally competition is not wrong. We just need to change the people who are giving or setting an example for what how you should perceive competition. So I think like discussions like this are very important to change people's minds about whether or not competition should be valued so much in their lives. But I think fundamentally competition is important, so long as the people who are not coming in the top whatever, if they measure the top whatever, are not being told that they are stupid or not good enough or not able to achieve. Because I think that's a very terrible thing. That's one of the most terrible things that comes out of competition, is that people then feel inferior when they actually aren't.
Very true. I want to actually use what Sarah said now. Thank you for that. I want to use that to pose another question to Dr. Pierre-Alain. Is from your experience of teaching people and training people for the competitions, and from your experience of attending these competitions years back, is do you have any ideas how to, in training for these competitions, how to remove the competitive nature that comes from it, which we've discussed can be destructive, and increase the curiosity nature that comes from competitions as well? Do you have any ideas about that?
That's a very difficult question.
Sorry about
of course, that's the goal. That's really the goal to achieve when you teach these Olympiads. And my main point that I want to teach to my students is how can you think by yourself when you have a new problem. That's basically the only thing I want to achieve. And I don't care if it's a very hard IMO problem or a basic standard problem. The thing that I like with a problem is when it's new and not just like the previous one. For each problem, you have to think again, and it's totally different from what your experience told you. So that's what make a good problem. And so if you want to transmit, not to focus on the competition side, I think in my point of view, if the students like to think to new problems, then I think I achieve my goal. And then whatever they focus too much on the results or not, then I see no way of avoiding that. If you have one, it would be nice. But for now, I have no idea how to avoid that. And I think it's just the personality of the individuals. Yeah, basically that's that. And yeah, sorry, I forgot something. Anyway.
So you would say that the beauty that comes from it is people's ability to increase their creativity, because each question is different from the previous one. It's totally new, and they become more creative.
Yes. And yeah, no, I found back what I wanted to say. A way, here I'm talking about Belgium Olympiads, but it's also true in international one, and I think in other ones. A way to avoid the feeling to say, oh, I'm bad because I got bad results, is to make ex aequo, for example, half of the people. So if a lot of people, you not show the results, you show just, okay, half of you have the same results, then I think you cannot feel bad because you in that hard, because it means a lot of students. And I think that's in my opinion, that's a way to still have the good side, as you told before. Okay, I mean, the Olympiads told me I'm good, so maybe I'm trying to be better and so on. But to avoid the downside of being, oh, I'm not good because I've been told that I'm dumb. So if a lot of people are equal, you cannot say you're dumb.
Yeah, it's preferable for no one to be called that. As Sarah, to quote Sarah, it's a horrible, awful thing to let that happen.
Yeah.
So, Sarah?
Oh, well, maybe a nice alternative is, because I think there are a lot of people who are quite, who really enjoy competitions, and then there also are a lot of people, on the other hand, who don't enjoy competitions. And I think one of the things that I know that they have in America, I'm not so sure if they have it elsewhere, but they have sort of research project camp type things where it's not, instead of having a maths Olympiad camp where people learn to solve, well, they learn maths to solve problems and so on, and then use them in a competitive environment. These sort of research maths camps are more about you get given a problem and you work on this problem with other people, and at the end of the day you're not given a mark for it. You're not told, oh, this person's project outcome was better than yours. At the end of the day you learn some maths, you have some fun, you work with other people, and you learn what it's like to actually do maths outside of some rating system, which I think is a really, really nice initiative. And I think it's quite sad that, for example, South Africa doesn't have something like this.
Professor Yanalitza, you have your hand raised.
I just want to quickly say something. That's a very good suggestion, Sarah. I was thinking of starting something like this in South Africa because there was something like this in Georgia. Now, if you're keen on helping with that, and anyone else who wants to do something like that, I would be very keen to join the team as well. I think that's a very good idea. I looked up on Google the definition of competition. Unfortunately, it seems like this word has a very ill meaning at the moment in human culture. It says the activity or condition of striving to gain or win something by defeating superiority over others. And there are two sub-definitions given: an event or context in which people take part in order to establish superiority or supremacy in a particular area, the person or people over whom one is attempting to establish one's supremacy or superiority, the opposition. So I think with this meaning, if that's the established meaning, and it seems to be the one that Google suggests to us, with this meaning, this word is a bad word, I would like to say. And so maybe if we want to kind of propose the idea of a different kind of competition, maybe we should change the word, because when the word starts to obtain a bad meaning, you can't use the same word for a good meaning. Like we've seen with many other historical things, like the concept of race and so on. And so, yeah, that's the other thing. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Professor. Yeah, I think it would be interesting if we were to think of a different word for it. So kind of, I get the idea you're implying, have one word for this very hard, quite harsh, negative definition that you gave now, and then another word which is the more positive of it, the more good-natured competition, if we can say it like that. Okay, so it is now 2 o'clock. Caroline, yes?
Yes, I would like to add just two things. First of all, with Sarah's proposition, I think it's wonderful. I don't think it's easy to establish such a training research camp, but that would be wonderful. And if you have any idea how to do, I would definitely consider it to organize some in Belgium as well. And about Zohab Janidze's remark, I was searching the definition of Olympiads because that might be a word. I haven't found a good definition, but I know that in Olympic Games, the third, old principle was that the important thing is to take part in it, which I think is more relevant than the definition of competition mentioned.
For Olympiad, what I found was a major international contest in a particular game, sport, or scientific subject.
Okay, so it doesn't tell much.
Great. So we're pretty much out of time. It's been an hour now. So I'm just going to open the floor for any last questions or remarks. And then I just want to give a short statement, and then we can finish off. So floor is open for anyone.
I just have a quick question for Prof. Janelitsa. If we are interested in starting this research camp, do we just email you?
Well, since the suggestion was made at the SAMS meeting, maybe it's not about me, it's about all of us who is here. Sarah, first of all, she's the one who suggested this. And so, yeah, we should take this discussion further, maybe within the SAMS society, and we can have maybe a separate meeting about this and see if we really want to go with it.
I'm very happy to be involved. If anyone wants to email me or whatever, I'll email you, Professor Janelitsa.
Great. Yes,
I'll send you
yes, I got the
Okay, great.
Wonderful. Okay.
There was another hand raised. Van Velden, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, sorry. No, I just wanted to add that something like the research camp, which is a brilliant idea. I think we also shouldn't make a competition between Olympiad and a research camp, because it's two distinct things. And although in Olympiad there's competition, we shouldn't say it's necessarily a bad thing. Although the word competition has a negative connotation, because the thing is, when you have something like an Olympiad, and it is a competition where you take part against other people, usually that drives you to train and learn a lot more, maybe in a short time, because you are taking part, so you want to do good. So I think that drives you a lot in learning a lot and a lot more. And yeah, I'm not comparing it to a research camp. That's a different thing, and you can also learn a lot more there. But so yeah, I think Olympiad is also the thing, or that as long as you have a positive thought of it.
Yes, agreed. Good. Any last remarks from anyone? Okay. Great. So then I just want to formally thank once more Professor Zohab Janelitsa and Dr. Pierre-Alain Jackman for joining us today. I'm very glad that you could take some time from all of your busy schedules to join us.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
Great. And then the one last announcement that I wanted to just make, let me just share my screen here. It's a bit more with regard to SAMS, is since it's the end of the year, we need to create a new committee for next year, for 2021. So it is open. You can submit. There's a Google form link on our the emails that were sent out and on our Instagram and Facebook, and I'm sure YouTube as well, that you can submit and then apply for the positions, and we will contact you soon thereafter, and then create the new committee for next year. So very excited for anyone to join. It was fun, and yeah, I look very much forward to who will take up the new positions. So once again, just thank you to everyone that joined today, and yes, next week we will hopefully have you here again. So enjoy your day and enjoy your weekend.